Righto, the video I didn't really want to make. As you can see, my new, freshly rebuilt 4L80 is in the car. It doesn't work. It doesn't work at all. It doesn't go forwards, it doesn't go backwards, it doesn't build line pressure. So in this video, I'm just going to run through a few of the troubleshooting steps I've been given by the guys in the States and try and work out what's wrong. Now, obviously, I don't know what I'm doing, but I don't think that's really fair. I've got a pretty good idea of what I'm doing, but I've missed something. I've missed a step along the way. Could happen to anybody, probably less to professional builders, but I'm not a professional builder. I don't charge anybody to do this, so I don't do this for anybody else, so I'm only impacting myself. So I'm going to go through the steps that the guys in the States have provided me and hopefully find something that's not right. So the first thing that people tell you to check with a 4L80 build is to verify that your fluid level is correct. Before I put this in the car, and I didn't film any of it because I wasn't expecting to have any dramas, and naturally I've got enough 4L80 videos on my channel already, I put a notch in the dipstick where it reaches the pan. And I've done that because there can be variation in where the actual full mark is on the dipstick. Different tubes are different heights, they can vary, but fluid level, correct fluid level in this is critical. So I've put a little slot in the side of the dipstick knowing where pan level is, and the correct level to fill on these transmissions is a 1/4 inch above full level. So the transmission was filled to that when it wasn't running, and then I put an extra inch on top of that because the fluid level will come down when the engine starts. So the full level is with the engine running. So I did that, still no line pressure, nothing at all. Also noticed that fluid level didn't really come down, which kind of indicates to me it's not getting pumped anywhere. The pump in this is as close as I could tell to brand new. I bought it complete. I bought it as a suit rebuild transmission, but the pump itself looks like it has done no work at all. There's still bluing on the pump body. The pump gears have no marks on them. They all measure within spec. Everything there looks happy and healthy. I then put an additional 4 liters of fluid into it just in case something really weird was going on, because the other guidance you get is if it doesn't work at the full level, fill it till it pukes. So I filled it a lot. It's got 4 liters extra in it at the moment. It hasn't puked. I don't know if you can see in the video, but I put a hose at the back here which actually comes off the puke tube. There's nothing in it, it's clear hose. I've done that on purpose so I can see it coming out and then feed it back into a bottle when it did puke, but it ain't gonna puke. So there's that. In addition to that as well, I've done this. This is a drain plug out of a TF80 Volvo transmission out of like a later model XC70. It's actually a 2-stage dipstick, a 2-stage plug, which has a dipstick on the back of it. And I've calibrated that dipstick, so the internal point of that dipstick is where the fluid level will be when it's running. So the idea being, instead of trying to read it on a dipstick, which is challenging because fluid sticks on the tube, you fill it through the dipstick hole so it can have residual fluid there. This is guaranteed. Run the car, everything working, cycle through the gears, get it up to temperature, pull that plug out, and it will drain to exactly 1/4 inch above the pan level. So when it works, that will be handy, but at the moment it doesn't. So it isn't fluid level, I can guarantee that. Next job on the agenda, the guys have suggested that I pull off a cooler line fitting. So these guys in there, I don't know if you can see that on the video, but there's the cooler out fitting, and then it goes to the cooler in the front of the car, and it comes back down this other line. So I'm going to pull the return off because that's just easier and I can drape it down, run the car, and see if any fluid drips out of there. It should have a pretty solid stream of fluid. It shouldn't just be drips and it shouldn't be not moving at all. So small change of plans. I was going to pull the rear fitting off and just run that into a bucket, but it's not quite long enough to actually drain anywhere, and if it does actually pump fluid, it's going to make a huge mess. So instead I've put the rear fitting back on. I've taken the front one off, which is just that guy there, strip it into this ice cream container at the moment, and I've put another AN6 line off the output of the pump that runs through the cooler, and that's going down into an empty bottle. So if it does pump stuff, which I'm not expecting it to do, if it does pump stuff, it will be relatively clean. So I'm just going to nip up that rear fitting and then I'll give it a test. There's no exhaust on the car at the moment because the exhaust wraps around over the top of all of this area. So I have removed it for the purpose of this test, and to make it easier if I have to pull the transmission out again. So hopefully it doesn't just blow the camera over and the ice cream container on the ground and make a huge mess, but we will see. So it does flow a little bit. There's not much in there. Yeah, I don't think that's enough, to be honest. But it's really hard to know for sure. It is definitely flowing something. I'll have to ask the guys again whether or not that's on the camera, whether that's enough or not, but we'll see shortly. The next thing they suggested was to just check the rear cooler line fitting. If it doesn't seal properly back in the center support, that could be an issue. I have another one on there. There's another 4L80 over there. I know that works, so I'm going to pull the rear cooler fitting off that one, put it on this one. They're both the long tube for a late model case. They're both right, but I'll swap it anyway just to rule it out and see if that I get line pressure after that. Just a little bit too tight to turn by hand. Great. Got those fittings out. This is the one, focus maybe. This is the one out of this transmission. And this one is the one out of my other transmission. They're slightly different styles, they're different colors. I'm just going to measure the dip tube part of it to see if there's any differences there. And if they're the same, or if this one's slightly bigger, that'll be fine. It presses into a seal in the center support. The seal is definitely in there. It is installed properly. I remember struggling to get the old one out, so I know it's in there. But I'll just measure these and see how they look. Right. The current one is exactly 10 millimeters on the tube. Probably can't see, but 10 millimeters. One from my known working transmission is a scotch below. So that one is 9.7, 9.75. Either way, it's smaller, so if there was a leak at this point, this one would be more likely to leak than the one that was in the transmission. That's going to fit tighter into that seal. That's not the issue. Alright, the next part of it is I need to pull off the pan, so I need to drain the fluid for that. Just going to drain from the dip tube first, this guy here, which is quite a bit higher than the normal drain plug, because I have so much extra fluid in there. Yeah, that's a better starting point, so I don't make too much of a mess, hopefully. Always going to be a mess. There's always a mess. Stay. Good way to see if the your breather port on the top of the transmission is working. That's draining now with the dipstick in. If I put my finger over the tube that's coming out of the puke port, you see the fluid flow slows right down. So it's definitely breathing okay. There's certainly not a blockage up there. Not that that was a cause or a potential cause of the problem, but something else ruled out. So that drain has stopped streaming, still dripping a little bit, but it's effectively now emptied to the top of that dip tube, which was about 5 litres by the look of it. I'll now remove this one and if my measurements were correct, I should get another 5 litres out from here, because that's roughly what the pan holds, up to a quarter inch above, with the valve body and everything in there. So should be another 5 litres in that end. Visible. Alright, that's down to a drip now, so I'm just going to pop the plug back in, pull the pan off. There's roughly going to be around a litre or a quart, close enough to the same thing, left in the pan because the plug's slightly above the pan level. So I will pull the pan off now. Okay, pan is off. It's just draining out the filter now. Another suggestion that was given when I asked the question on Facebook was to make sure that the filter hasn't got any manufacturing defects in it. Apparently it's getting common, more specifically with 4L60 filters, to have the actual filter neck to be molded shut. So that won't work well. So I will check that. I don't expect I'll find a problem, because this is a Jake's high flow filter, which the Jake's team, they pull apart and they put like a brass gauze in it instead of the filter material. So I imagine they have at least had a look over it to make sure that isn't the case, but it's an easy enough thing to check, so I will check that too. After that, the next test I'm going to do is I'm going to pull off the pressure sensor on the side of the case, which I know works because the pressure sensor came off my last transmission. It was reading fine there. I know the transfer function's correct on how I'm reading the data from the sensor. None of that's changed. I've just literally pulled the old trans out, put this trans in. So I'm pretty confident that's fine, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to blow compressed air into the port where that sensor is, because that's line pressure. That would hopefully show me if I've got any significant leaks anywhere, because I'll get sprayed in the face with fluid and I'll be able to work out where that came from. If that doesn't show me anything, or if it does indicate a leak but I can't work out where, I'm going to try and connect a 12-volt pump to that port and pump transmission fluid into that location, which should then show me a gentle stream of ATF where the leak may be, hopefully, if the theory is correct. I don't know if it's going to try and backfeed out of where the filter would have been or what the case may be, but I'm going to try it anyway and see what it shows. Next test, while that transmission is still draining into the pan, that's the fluid that didn't come out of the drain tube and whatever's come out of the filter and valve body since it's been sitting there. Jake's high flow filter, looks like there's no molding defects or anything. Looks clear to me. I can see the brass gauze from the top and the bottom. I'm just going to put fluid in the port, and if it's clear, it's going to go in the ice cream container. So easy enough test. Here's some I prepared earlier. Don't spill it everywhere and ruin my test. I can do this better. I can do this better. Aha! Yeah. You won't be able to see it or hear it, but that is just flying straight through that filter. There's not a problem with the filter. The filter is fine. Alright, rule that out. Moving on to removing the pressure sensor. Okie dokie. I need to remove the neutral safety switch, or the Prindle switch, which covers the trans pressure sensor. It's actually behind that, so need to remove the shifter linkage, remove this guy, might as well unplug everything, and then I should be able to get that sensor out. I did it up really tight, and I did it up tight out of the car, so this is going to be hard to get out. Another thing that was asked was, do I have the manual valve installed correctly? Yes I do. So it's on the pin, it's moving freely in the valve body bore. It's not loose, it's the right amount of snugness, so I think that's fine. So that's in park at the moment, I believe. I'll just need to verify that just to make sure. Easy enough to do. Take that off there and turn this guy. Definitely in park. So that must sit like that when it's in park. So that's the only place it can be, and it's the valve that came in the transbrake. So unless it's the wrong valve, it doesn't look wrong. While we're in this position anyway, it's a Jake's D3 transbrake. For anyone who hasn't watched my previous videos, modified by the Jake's team in Texas. You can see the pressure control solenoid is installed. The version I got didn't have the plug, even though I got it within the last 6 months. It didn't come with the plug, so I followed the earlier instructions to grind down the flats on the pressure control solenoid and leave it there unplugged. It is unplugged, the plug is just zip tied to the top of it, so that should be technically running full line pressure, because what that will do is that will add line pressure bypassing this valve to the back of the boost valve, which will boost it to its maximum potential. That's what it should be doing. It's not, so maybe there's a leak coming from here somewhere. Will be easy enough to find out when I can put some pressure to the pressure port. Quick camera change to show this while the other one's set up on the tripod. There is my pressure sensor installed in the port on the transmission. You can see how high my fluid level was because it's actually leaking out of the O-ring behind the input speed sensor. So that's how high this was filled with transmission fluid and did nothing. I've just moved the brindle switch over here for now so I can start removing that, but that's going to be interesting. Also to point out, this is a Honeywell sensor. I was going to go a low dollar motorsport sensor, but low dollar motorsport in Australia is very high dollar motorsport. So Honeywell, which makes sense, is for a living, is cheaper. So that's the route I've gone. So I'm going to take that off and free up that port and see if I can blow some air into it. You'll have to excuse the noise. My neighbour's just started mowing his lawn. I've just rigged up this, so 12 volt pump connected to some ATF. It's actually the same ATF I took out. I've just pulled it from the pan and put it over there because the hose isn't long enough. 12 volt power supply into the feed port, and it's not a good fit, so it does leak a little bit from there, but that's okay. What I've noticed, and I'll fire up the pump again in a minute, is it's coming out of here. It's coming out of other places as well, but it's a lot coming out of there. So if I turn the pump back on, that stream increases quite significantly out of the pressure control solenoid where it mounts on the valve body. It also leaks from up here. That's where the transbrake solenoids are. But that's the biggest leak, so I'm going to fix that one first. Alright, and as I mentioned earlier, this is a modified pressure control solenoid. It's the one with the slot cut in it as per the Jake's instructions, but for the purpose of this test, I'm just going to take this out and put a new one in there. I've got a brand new one, so I'll put a brand new one in there and see if it seals against the valve body any better. See if there's anything in there that indicates a problem. I'm not sure if there's supposed to be an O-ring in there. I don't think so, but once I get it out, we'll know a bit better. That's just the clip that holds the wire there. Not doing anything. Yeah, that looks like a T25, maybe T30 Torx. 27 on it. Can't see anything except for my arm, I'm sure, but it's alright, I'll show you in a minute. One bolt and a little retaining clip that holds this in. There's a bolt. There's the clip. There's the camera. Don't know if that's focused or not, can't really tell, but that's what holds it in. Yeah, and it should just come out, which it does. Hopefully it doesn't piss fluid everywhere. Yeah, it's going a little bit, but that's alright. Alright. So there's the guy. Where am I? There. So there's the thing. You can see I've got a flat ground into it, which I tied it up with a file afterwards. Should still seal around this surface, but there's no O-ring or anything in there, so maybe it needs one. Yeah, alright, well, I'll get a new one out of the box and have a look. What a surprise, I can't find my new one, but that's okay. I found one from my other transmission, so there's the, yeah, focus, maybe. There's the modified one. You can see it's got the flat ground into it, no seals or anything. It's the later type with a different plug. And this one, this is the one that I've pulled out of another transmission. If it's gonna stop focusing on my face, maybe if I put it in the same level, there we go. That's got, you can see screen filters on it, which the Jake's instructions say to remove, and it's round. There's no flat ground into it. Different plug, but I'm not going to connect it anyway. I just want to see if it seals a hole. So I'm just going to pop that in and see if it seals up any differently. Okay, just put a standard unmodified shift solenoid in here. Wrong generation, different plug, doesn't matter, it's not connected anyway. Turn the pump on. A tiny leak maybe, but nothing like it was. It is leaking from all of the shift solenoids, so the two on the back, A and B, and the two that are actually on top of the transbrake, they all have a pretty typical stream from them. I wouldn't say typical, but yeah, pretty even stream, so don't know if they're supposed to or not, but I'll look at that next. Alright, we're right down the rabbit hole now. I've just butchered this EPC. This is the one that I just took out of the car, so this is the one that's leaking. I don't need that. This is the only part that matters. So I effectively get a pointer. Fluid needs to go where it would feed in here and out here, or vice versa, to allow pressure on the back of the boost valve. That's what gives it full line pressure, but I think it's leaking out of here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill the back, because that's actually, you can't really tell, I can't show it with one hand, but that's a plunger inside. There must be a spring at this end. I can't really get that cap off, so I'm not gonna bother with that. Actually, that might be a better way to modify them in the future. Yeah, anyway, I'm going to drill the back out, and I'm going to try and plug it up to that gallery there, so nothing gets past there. So I should be able to do that with a set screw or something. So I'll drill it out and see what I can do. All right, drill that center hole out to 9mm, and you get this. So there's a plunger that goes inside of it. So effectively, I should be able to hopefully tap the back, as long as it seals in front of this land here. So it's got to be plugged there. Anything behind that doesn't really matter. I could effectively cut that off, but then it will just bypass fluid and give full line pressure. Okay, now we're left with this. I've just trimmed the top of it off a little bit, but if I'm just gonna focus, pop it down here, over to focus. I'm just going to tap that and put a set screw in there, and then it should be fine, because everything below this level that's the circuit that will go towards the back of the boost valve. So if it goes through the middle or around the side, it shouldn't matter. Of course, I'm going to post this on the forums, well, not forums, but the 4L80 page, and if I'm wrong, somebody please tell me so, but I think that if it's plugged just at the top here, and everything here can flow internally, that will give me max line pressure and give me no troubles. Alright, sketchy plug. I have tapped that to M10 by 1.5. It's the closest that I can find that's going to fit. And I found an M10 bolt that's relatively short. It's not going to be bottomed out anyway, but it'll stop where the thread stops, and a bit of Loctite to seal it all up. Let's see how this goes. I would say that's sealed. Pump's running, leaking out of the solenoids again, but nothing here. Okay, it's getting a bit crowded under here, but I want to do another little test while I've got it apart. So I've just built another tower of terror here on top of toolboxes and crap to connect my EFI live up to the computer. I've reconnected the main harness connector on the transmission just so I can power the solenoids. And if you listen, if I turn on shift solenoid A, you can hear them tick, and shift solenoid B, so I can hear them both working. And I want to turn them on while the pump's running to see if that exhausted stream of fluid stops coming out of there. I could probably do the same with the transbrake solenoid, but I won't be able to do that and hold the camera. So let's give this a go. Not much room left in my tray, so this could be messy. Alright, pump on. It'll probably leak out of the transbrake first, out of the transbrake solenoid up here. There it goes. So transbrake solenoids are going first, but the rear two are going. So let me just turn on A and B, which I think would stop that stream. It does. So now it's only the two coming from the transbrake solenoid. And there's a center port on the valve body. I don't know if that's an exhaust, but there's that too. Interesting. Alright, let's try the transbrake on. Yeah, too hard to film that and do it, but yes. So turning on shift solenoid A and B stops the streams from the back two, which is what I expected. That's the exhaust from the solenoids. Holding down the transbrake button, which activates the transbrake solenoids up here, stops the streams that are dropping here. So when everything's all activated, the only stream that's left is that guy. So now I just need to know, is that normal? Because that seems to be in line with the, I think that's a torque converter solenoid. So let's see if that's normal, and if it is, we can put it back together. Okay, so I've asked the question about this guy leaking on the Facebook group, waiting for a reply. It doesn't look like it should be, according to the diagram. It looks like there's a feed that's, I think, here, which is pressure feed to the TCC regulator, but I don't think it should be exhausting here unless the valve is flogged out in the valve body. But I will wait and see. But in the meantime, I'm going to put this all back together and test it, because if that is broken, I can't get the parts for a couple of weeks anyway, so I may as well have this all buttoned up, and yeah, if it fixes it, happy days. Alright, I'm in the car, ready to test it. It's a bit of a mess in here because I'm halfway through doing stuff, but here we go, moment of truth. This is all recording, connected up to EFI Live to the computer. Getting things like transmission fluid temperature, so I know it's connected, it's got power to the trans, otherwise that wouldn't work. And we have the trans pressure sensor here, which is reading 1 psi, which is a rounding error. I've got that reading slightly high, so it's not sitting on 0, so I know where it's at. So let's turn the key, see if it does anything. Well, that didn't fix it. Alright, so I've been looking at more diagrams. This is just one that I've come across that's going to simulate what I'm doing pretty well. So this is the hydraulic flow diagram for when the engine's in park with the engine running. So effectively the same as what I've done by backfeeding it through the pressure port instead of running the pump. It should have the same highlights as it would. So if you look at this diagram here, the dark orange is pressure. So this cavity here would be under pressure with my method, which it is. Okay, so that's this guy here, which feeds the back portion of the TCC valve. So that's the TCC valve there. This is the one that was leaking. So it's getting pressured here, but I think in the other valve body, and this is just one I had laying around, I think in the actual transbrake it's going back through here into this, and then from there it's an open cavity into this guy, and this is the guy that runs right through the valve body and drips out the bottom. So I reckon I've got a bad seal or a bad sealing surface there. Might not be my whole problem, but it's not good. So I'll sort out a Sonax, I think there's a Sonax sleeve or a Sonax oversized valve you can put in there, so I'll check that out. Well, that concludes things for today. Everything's all bolted back up. Still doesn't work, as you saw in the line pressure video. So I will just have to go back to the Facebook group, ask some more questions, see if anybody knows. I'll order that TCC kit anyway, because that'll take a few weeks to come, and just got to fix a problem, if not the whole thing. So I'll leave it at that. Anybody that has any ideas or any comments, bang them in the comments on YouTube, or let me know on Facebook, and I'll definitely check it out. Thanks all.